Standing under the unforgiving glare of the stage lights at the Magnolia Hotel, I braced myself for the humiliation about to unfold. At 32, I felt completely exposed, stripped of dignity. My sister swept her gaze across the crowded ballroom, wearing a polished, camera-ready smile. Lifting the microphone as though she were presenting a grand prize, she pointed directly at me, dressed in oversized black clothes, and delivered the line meant to destroy me. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special last-minute offer for anyone who needs their driveway cleared during this blizzard. Who will start the bidding at just $1 for my utterly disappointing little sister?" A wave of cruel laughter spread across the front tables, where the city's elite sipped champagne and enjoyed the spectacle of my disgrace. I lowered my head, trying to conceal my tears, while my fingers gripped tightly around the wooden frame of the canvas pressed against my chest. It was all I had left, a slashed and ruined painting that still carried the last fragments of my pride. The laughter only grew louder, until a deep voice from the back sliced through the noise like thunder. $1 million. Silence fell instantly. Every head turned, searching for the person bold enough to make such an impossible bid. A man in a dark suit stood up slowly. The confident smile on my sister's face disappeared as she looked back and forth between him and me, utterly confused. She had no idea who I really was. But before explaining why a stranger would offer such a fortune for a woman her own family treated as worthless, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to witness the true cost of cruelty. 2 years earlier, during the first blizzard of the season, I found myself standing at Miranda's doorstep in Omaha with nothing but an empty heart and a worn-out suitcase containing the remnants of my life. My divorce had been finalized just 48 hours earlier. I had no savings, and shortly after, a corporate layoff took away the design job that had once provided me stability. As I stood on the porch of my sister's limestone villa, the wind chimes barely audible behind the heavy oak door, I waited. When Miranda finally opened it, she offered neither warmth nor comfort. Leaning against the doorframe, she studied my disheveled appearance with cold disapproval, adjusted her silk robe, and gestured toward the foyer without moving aside. The message was unmistakable. My presence was nothing more than an inconvenience she was reluctantly tolerating. "You can stay, Roxanne, but this isn't a hotel where you can sit around feeling sorry for yourself while I pay for your recovery," she said, leading me down a spotless hallway to a narrow door near the kitchen. There, she outlined her terms. I would be given shelter in an unfinished basement storage room in exchange for handling every household chore, without pay. The basement was vast, cold, and cluttered with cardboard boxes and old furniture. The damp concrete carried a stale, suffocating odor. There was no proper bed, only a thin mattress on the floor beneath exposed insulation, and a single flickering bulb for light. I accepted, knowing the alternative was a homeless shelter in the brutal Nebraska winter. Still, I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She had secured a full-time servant who had nowhere else to go. At our first dinner, Preston, my brother-in-law, cut into a steak with a smirk that made my stomach churn. After wiping wine from his lips, he leaned back, letting his expensive watch glint under the light, a silent display of the gap between our lives. "This house doesn't support parasites," he said mockingly. "If you want to stay, you'd better at least learn how to clean the toilets properly." He laughed crudely. Miranda offered no defense. Instead, she nodded and continued discussing her social calendar, treating me as if I were nothing more than furniture that had somehow learned to listen. It soon became obvious they had no intention of helping me rebuild my life. What they wanted was someone beneath them, someone to make their own success feel greater. My days turned into an exhausting cycle of labor, beginning before sunrise and ending only when I could barely stand. I scrubbed floors on my hands and knees, handled endless loads of laundry, and cooked meals I was too tired to even taste. Miranda monitored my work with a checklist, while Preston would barge into the basement without knocking, demanding fresh towels or complaining about his car, never once acknowledging me as a person. The constant humiliation hollowed me out until I felt like nothing more than a ghost drifting through their perfect, yet empty world. The artist I once was seemed like a distant memory. Then, one night, While shifting heavy crates to access the water heater, I discovered old paint cans left behind by contractors in a dark corner. The brushes were stiff, and the colors were limited to dull grays and muddy shades, but something inside me sparked. I pulled discarded plywood from construction debris, leaned the boards against the cinder block wall, and, with my heart pounding, dipped a makeshift palette knife into the thick paint. I worked with wild, unrestrained energy, pouring every ounce of anger and sorrow into sharp, chaotic strokes. With each movement, the basement began to feel less like a prison. The paintings evolved into abstract winter landscapes, raw and honest, far more real than the polished facade upstairs, where Miranda and Preston played their shallow games of status. Beneath the dim glow of a flickering bulb, I signed the corner of my first finished piece with just 2 letters, RX. It marked the beginning of a hidden identity, one Miranda could never control and a talent her cruelty could never destroy. That spring, the snow outside slowly disappeared, yet the cold inside the house refused to fade. On one Tuesday, Miranda walked downstairs to inspect the storage shelves. Her steps halted when she noticed a painting I had propped against the wall, titled Melting Snow. She reached out, sliding her manicured fingers over its rough texture. Her eyes narrowed, and instead of offering admiration, she curled her lips into a dismissive smirk. "This dull and depressing thing might at least be useful," she remarked coldly. "It could cover the moldy spot on the back wall of my office instead of just lying here collecting dust." Without asking for permission, she seized the painting and carried it away as though it were nothing more than garbage she intended to discard. I remained silent, unable to object, watching helplessly as she walked off with something that held a piece of my soul. Miranda later delivered the painting to a well-known interior designer who was working for a wealthy client. The designer was instantly captivated and handed her $5,000 in cash without hesitation. Miranda slipped the money into her purse with a pleased smile, realizing that keeping me around could bring her profit without any real effort. She concealed the painting's true worth and, that same evening, tossed a wrinkled $50 bill onto the kitchen table in front of me, with clear contempt. "I had to work hard to sell your pile of junk to a thrift shop for a few pathetic dollars," she said. "Take this and buy yourself some sweets." Her words were a lie, and Preston only laughed along. I picked up the small bill, feeling humiliated, and quietly made my way back to the basement, unaware that my anonymous work had already begun attracting attention. Melting Snow, signed RX, started an extraordinary journey through private sales and auctions. Art critics began writing about a mysterious artist from Omaha with a uniquely haunting style. Meanwhile, Miranda remained completely oblivious, too focused on social events and quick gains to notice anything else. She still believed I was a failure, someone scribbling on scraps of wood. Her arrogance kept her from seeing that she was sheltering a world-class talent beneath her own roof. As a year passed, my secret life began shifting in ways Miranda could never have imagined. I confided in Deanna, a trusted friend who worked at a reputable small gallery, and together we arranged for my new paintings to be sold anonymously on consignment. Deanna was the only person who knew that I was RX. She managed everything discreetly, directing the earnings into a private bank account I had opened. Each deposit felt like laying another brick toward my eventual freedom. All the while, I continued cleaning Miranda's floors and enduring constant verbal abuse. Yet beyond those walls, RX's reputation kept growing across Omaha. Critics described the work as a raw expression of suffering and resilience, and wealthy collectors competed fiercely to acquire it. It felt almost unreal to hear Miranda discussing RX on the phone while I stood behind her, polishing silverware or vacuuming. She spoke about the artist with an air of false sophistication, never realizing that the very genius she admired was the unpaid servant living under her roof. The tension reached its peak when Miranda secured a contract to organize the city's largest winter charity gala. Instead of outsourcing the invitations, she forced me to hand-paint 100 elaborate cards to cut costs. She handed me premium cardstock along with a long list of instructions for intricate floral borders. Each piece demanded hours of work, on top of my usual chores. I stayed awake deep into the early hours of the morning, my eyes burning and my fingers stiff, while Miranda inspected my progress with constant disapproval. Meanwhile, Preston bragged to his friends about Miranda's supposed creativity and vision as I stood in the kitchen washing dishes in silence. Miranda had such a sharp eye for detail that she personally supervised even the invitations. He would boast about it, never realizing he was admiring work I had done, while I remained completely uncredited. After nearly 20 straight hours spent on the cards and cleaning, I finally told Miranda I wanted to move out. Standing in the doorway, my hands shaking, I explained that I had saved a small amount of money and hoped to find a place of my own. She didn't even lift her gaze from the laptop. Instead, she let out a cold, cutting laugh. "Do you really think anyone in this city would hire a pathetic failure like you after your divorce and that gap in your employment?" she asked, fixing me with an intense, almost frightening stare. Then she threatened to spread rumors, to tell people I was unstable and a thief if I dared to leave, making sure my life would be destroyed. Her cruelty was a harsh reminder of the control she still held over me. Even as RX fame continued to rise beyond those walls, I withdrew into the freezing basement, watching the success of my alter ego grow alongside the exploitation I endured. I glanced at the unfinished invitations on my makeshift desk, struck by the irony that those guests would soon pay thousands for work I was forced to create under the threat of homelessness. Still, I kept painting. Every brushstroke felt like a step closer to escaping the darkness. 3 days before the gala, the tension in the house reached its limit. Local news was buzzing about a world-renowned art collector and critic, Mr. Sterling, who was arriving in Omaha for the event, eager to discover new talent. Miranda became obsessed with impressing him to elevate her firm, yet at the same time, she was more determined than ever to keep me hidden during his visit. She cornered me in the kitchen and handed me a crate filled with tarnished silver and heirloom cutlery, ordering that every piece be polished until it shone like a mirror before the guest list was finalized. The task felt impossible. Later, when she announced she would be gone all afternoon for venue walkthroughs and floral consultations, I carried the silver down to the basement. But my thoughts were fixed on the large canvas I had been working on for weeks. I had poured everything into a piece titled The Silence, a dark and evocative oil painting that captured the suffocating beauty of a soul trapped beneath a frozen lake. This was the work I intended to have Deanna deliver to the gallery, hoping Mr. Sterling might see it during a private viewing before the event. My hands moved with urgent precision as I layered deep cerulean and charcoal tones, losing myself in the steady rhythm of the brush. The scent of linseed oil and turpentine filled the air, rich and intoxicating, more liberating than any perfume Miranda owned. Suddenly, the basement door creaked open, then slammed hard against the stone wall, breaking my concentration. Miranda had returned hours earlier than expected. Her face was flushed with stress, and she carried that familiar storm of irrational anger that always seemed to find me. She stood at the base of the wooden stairs, eyes wide, taking in the scene, me at my makeshift easel, palette in hand instead of the polishing cloth she had ordered me to use. The silver platters lay untouched on the concrete floor, their dull surfaces silently defying the control she demanded over my time. Her anger exploded. She strode across the small space, her voice rising as she accused me of being ungrateful for everything she claimed to have done, building her reputation while supposedly supporting me. Then she snatched a letter opener from a nearby crate and, with deliberate force, drove it into the fresh oil on my canvas. She said I was delusional to call myself an artist, and insisted I would ruin the most important night of her career with my hobbies. I stood frozen as months of work were slashed into pieces. The sound of the canvas tearing struck like a physical blow, yet I didn't cry. Miranda flung the shattered remains onto the floor and, balancing in her high heels, crushed and snapped the wooden frame beneath her feet. She instructed me to clean the mess and finish polishing the silverware before dinner, then walked out without another word. Left alone in the damp basement, I carefully gathered the jagged fragments of wood and canvas. A strange calm washed over me. The woman who had just exited no longer felt like my sister, but like a stranger who merely shared my blood. I picked up the largest surviving piece, the section that still captured the frozen lake, and tucked the torn fragments into my jacket, holding them close as the final remains of what our relationship once was. I did not feel defeated. Instead, the attack clarified my limits and strengthened my resolve. I returned to the silverware, polishing each piece with steady, controlled movements, while the image of the destroyed painting etched itself permanently into my mind. By Saturday night, the Magnolia Hotel ballroom glowed with golden light, hosting the city's elite for the winter event. Miranda insisted I attend as her assistant, carrying her clutch, holding her water, and made me wear an old, oversized black dress, so I would blend into the background. Humiliated, I followed several steps behind her, but kept the central fragment of the slashed canvas hidden in my coat, clutching it as proof of who I still was. When the renowned collector, Mr. Sterling, arrived, the room fell silent. From the shadows, I watched him move through the gallery, clearly unimpressed by the decorative pieces Miranda had selected. She approached him, attempting to engage, but he responded only with a polite nod before continuing on. Her anxiety grew as it became obvious she had failed to impress him. Desperate to reclaim attention, Miranda suddenly called me onto the stage. Her intention was clear: to humiliate me publicly, to turn me into a spectacle and assert her superiority before the city's most influential figures. As I stepped toward the podium, she noticed the bundle beneath my coat. Grabbing the microphone, she mocked me in front of everyone. She revealed the slashed canvas to the audience and announced a mock auction, declaring that my worth, as nothing more than a snow shoveler, would start at $1. Laughter rippled through the front rows. Preston cheered loudly, adding crude jokes. Then suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. A voice from the back interrupted with a bid of $1 million. Mr. Sterling stood and made his way toward the stage. Miranda assumed he was playing along to deepen the humiliation and greeted him with her usual polished charm. He ignored her completely, focusing instead on the fragment I held. After examining it closely, he announced, loud and clear, that he would pay $1 million, not for a servant's labor, but for the legendary RX signature visible on the piece. He explained that he had spent 2 years searching for the artist behind the raw, agonizing beauty he had encountered in private sales. His words struck the room like a shockwave. Color drained from Miranda's face as she realized she had been discarding valuable work and treating a remarkable talent like an unpaid maid. Mr. Sterling confirmed that the brushwork on the fragment matched the high-priced pieces circulating in private galleries, identifying RX as the most sought-after name in the modern landscape movement. The crowd shifted instantly. Those who had mocked me moments earlier surged forward, now taking photos and showing genuine admiration. Praise for Miranda vanished, replaced by cold indifference. Her reputation began to crumble before everyone's eyes. Preston stood speechless as his social standing collapsed. For the first time in 2 years, I no longer felt defined by the failures Miranda and others had forced upon me. Holding the torn remains of the painting, I understood that its destruction had become proof of my identity. I stepped down from the stage beside Mr. Sterling, aware that the version of myself Miranda had controlled no longer existed. A month later, another blizzard swept through Omaha, but my life had already transformed. The fallout from the gala was swift. Miranda's event company teetered on the edge of bankruptcy as sponsors and donors withdrew their support after the scandal. Preston lost his position at his real estate firm. Meanwhile, Deanna, the gallery contact who had quietly represented my work, filed a lawsuit over the theft and unauthorized sale of my first painting. Together, we gathered transaction records and witness statements, ensuring Miranda would be held accountable. With part of the money I no longer desperately needed, I leased a bright, sunlit studio in a lively part of the city. High ceilings and white walls replaced the suffocating basement, becoming a space for creation rather than confinement. I began preparing for my first international exhibition, surrounded by people who respected both me and my work. Months later, Miranda called from a public payphone near a bus station. Her voice was desperate as she pleaded for financial help, offering hollow apologies and weak explanations. She claimed her cruelty had been a misguided attempt to push me toward success. I responded in a calm, cold tone. Her actions had destroyed our sisterhood in the same way she had torn apart my painting. No apology could repair that damage. I told her never to contact me again, then blocked the number. Standing on my studio balcony, I breathed in the cold air. It felt like freedom. I returned inside, faced a large new easel, and picked up my brush, beginning a piece filled with bold, defiant color, leaving the darkness of the basement far behind. Before closing, consider Roxanne's journey. Her victory was not merely financial. It revealed the psychological prison she had been forced to endure while someone close to her tried to extinguish her light. There are lessons here. Do not allow narrow or shallow opinions to define your worth. Roxanne was always talented. The world only recognized it once she refused to accept her sister's version of her. And while many believe family is everything, sometimes family can be toxic. Choosing yourself and walking away from harm is not betrayal, it is survival. Now it is your turn. If you were in Roxanne's place, would you have walked away so firmly or given Miranda another chance? Was her refusal to reconcile too harsh or necessary for her freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective may help someone else find the strength to choose themselves.